just want to go back and think for a few minutes into this relationship between thinking and feeling. I'm not entirely happy with those terms, actually. But I suppose I'm thinking about this because of Dana, your response to my last video about value and something I can't value and embodiment, I think it was. Because in the video you were responding to, I'd cited Damasio and his pithy quotation, which was that we're not thinking beings that feel, we are thinking being. I beg your pardon. We're not thinking beings that feel, we're feeling beings that think. And I don't know, I mean, it sounded to me as if you were suggesting that there was something controversial in that claim, or if I just pulled that out of my orifice. A lot of things I do say are pulled fairly wholesale out of my orifices, for sure, but that wasn't one of them, actually. I was citing Damasio from his book, something about the self, can't remember, it'll come back to me. And I was also citing his older work, his somatic marker hypothesis stuff that he's put in some of his, a number of his books, Descartes' Error, and he mentions it in Looking for Spinoza, and I think it's also in The Feeling of What Happens and this stuff. It's not mainstream particularly, but it's not terribly controversial, because he's building on a tradition in psychology that goes back to William James. It's not newfangled stuff, really. But I mean, the basis of it is that in our evolutionary history, we start out as feeling beings, and that thing that we call thinking, and I'll come back to that in a minute, is a relatively recent development. That's what he means when he says we're feeling beings that think. And it's not just because it's in our history, it's also because it's in our kind of neural architecture, really, our brain architecture. We still have mostly the same architecture that our cousins in the animal kingdom have. The architecture that processes emotional content, the basal ganglia, the amygdala, parts of the hippocampus, other bits and pieces, and which is involved in all of the processing of sensory data, the processing of memory data, the processing of internal bodily states. All these parts of the brain are involved in that. So all of this stuff, passes through the charnel house of the body and the charnel house of our feelings. So we haven't left it behind, as though it's an evolutionary relic we've walked away from. We're still using that every day. We're still plugged into that particular piece of processing equipment. Yeah, and it's not just Damasio, Joel Edelman talks about it, Susan Greenfield talks about it. It's pretty well established as an idea. Okay, so this thing about feeling beings that think, I do have a problem with the word feeling, which I'll have to do some more thinking on, but this thing thinking is a problem for me, because I think when we talk about thinking, we're bound into a particularly human, internal, first-person understanding of what thinking is, and I think that's not a good complement to feeling. It's not the opposite, because our thinking is completely bound up and threaded through with emotions and feelings. As I say, not the grand guignol emotions, but just the subtle feeling toward of moment-to-moment shifts in our felt sense of what's going on for us. So I don't think it makes any sense really to distinguish thinking from feeling, because every thought that we're having, the experience, the phenomenology of thinking itself, emerges from the fact that it's partly felt. I think it's more useful to distinguish it from other cognitive processes, perhaps, and processes which can go on outside of brains, other processes, which are more usefully contrasted with feeling, and which, combined with feeling, produces that thing we call thinking. And the two candidates I would pick for that are calculation and signification. I've talked about calculation before, but I think signifying and calculating are more useful opposites to feeling. Signifying is really important. We are the signifying monkeys. As far as I'm aware, no other animal can signify in anything like the capacity that we can. and particularly signify the kind of signification that's resulted in language. You know, when I'm looking around here, I'm driving on the M6 here, looking out this beautiful day, I have to say. You know, and there's lots of trees around about, and I completely seamlessly think of these things as trees. You know, I don't have any problem distinguishing one. You know, I'm feeling the need to distinguish one from the other. You know, I'm able to take this information, abstract certain salient features from it, and then signify the salient feature by giving it, in this case, a name. It could be a gesture or it could be a sound, but in this case a name. I can call it tree, you know, I can do that signifying thing. And that's really unique, isn't it, our ability to do that. And the fact that we do that not just with language but with other things as well, you know, and then it starts to feed into metaphor and figurative languages of all kinds, and it allows us to form categories, you know. So that signifying thing, which, as I say, is not peculiar to humans. Other things could signify. I'm sure you could enact signification within a computer. That's easy enough. And then the other thing is calculate, you know, which is, I think, is a kind of form of signification. You know, we can identify these unique experiences, and we can, you know, count these unique experiences. We can start to form indices of these unique experiences, and it seems to me that these are leading to the bases of calculation. As far as I'm aware, again, no animals can calculate. In fact, of course, animals can't count. Animals lived in a much more kind of analog world than ours, it seems to me. We can digitize the world, and because of the ability to signify, we can digitize the world and break it up into units, and then put the units together with operators and form the basis of mathematics, and do all that kind of stuff. Animals can't do that. The analog counting system of animals, if that makes any sense, there's no counting system at all, but the analog system of experience of animals presumably means something like, there's one thing, there's lots of things, you know. And I know that there are some primitive languages, primitive peoples who have a similar kind of numerical system. They can signify and calculate, of course, because all humans can. But in some cases, I think languages only have words for 1, 2, possibly 3, and then many. So the ability to take signification, turning into number, and then run calculations through the possibilities of number. I mean, that's not even present in some cultures, although of course it could be quite easily. It's not easy to make it present within an animal culture. So I think there's a huge difference there. You know, I think Damasio is right. It's a pithy phrase to say that we are feeling beings that think.